Hello, friends, and welcome back to Stories About Entitled People. Well done, OP. What simple-minded idiot leaves only 1 hour between hitting the restaurant and going to the show anyway? But before we begin, best way to support our channel is to leave comments, like, and subscribe with the turned-on bell so you don't miss the new video every single day. Here we go. Table of Karens make my waiter training a living nightmare. Back in 2014, I was hired to work on a cruise ship. I started off as a lowly restaurant steward, bussing tables and mopping floors in the buffet. After a few months, I was promoted to back waiter and was moved to the main dining hall. I quickly caught on to the back waiter duties. My front waiter, who we'll call Bert, took notice of my hard work. After a couple of weeks in my new position, Bert told me that it's only a matter of time before I get promoted to front waiter, and he wanted to start training me on how to be one. So he told me to shadow him when the next group of passengers were seated in our section so I can observe him how he did his front waiter duties. Unfortunately for us, the next group of passengers seated in our section was an A-top of Carens. Bert and I welcomed them to the restaurant. They were friendly at first. And the head Karen, an older, heavier-set man, asked, "There's a show in the main theater we want to see that begins in about an hour. Is it possible for us to get our dinners, eat it, and get to the show on time?" To which Bert says, "Absolutely, depending on what you order." After looking over the menu, the Karens were ready to place their order, and 5 out of 8 of them wanted the New York steak, the one single menu item that took the longest to cook. Bert told them this, and that if they all wanted to order the New York steak, that there's no guarantee that we can get them their dinners fast enough to eat and be able to get to the show on time. Bert suggested alternative dishes that could get out much quicker, but the Karens refused to change their orders. Bert read the order back to Karens, and they all confirmed that it was correct. This is important for later. Bert handed me the ticket, and I ran back to the kitchen to assemble their meals. My first stop was the New York steak counter, and to my horror, there was a line a mile long of waiters waiting to drop off their tickets. Just so you know, this ship has a max capacity of about 3,500 passengers. The main dining hall seats nearly 1,000 people, and I have never seen the New York counter as busy as it was this night. It seemed like everyone and their mothers were ordering the New York steak. I'd have to wait at least 20 minutes just to drop off my ticket, and God knows how long afterwards till the cook got to my ticket in order to cook them. With the wait time and juggling the other tables Bert and I had to wait on in our section, I knew there was no chance the Karens can get their meals and make it to the show on time. So I rushed out to Bert, told him what the ETA was on the New York steaks, and that he needed to tell the Karens that they needed to change their order, otherwise they'll miss their show. Bert relayed my message to them. He came back to me and said they still refused to change their order. Bert shrugged his shoulders and said, "Well, we did all we could do to try to convince them to change their order so they can make it to the show they wanted to see, but they refused to change it. So if they miss their show, they miss it, and it'll be their fault." I did my best to get their meal as quickly as possible while also waiting on the other tables in our section. Sure enough, the Karens missed the start of the show, and they were pissed. They demanded to speak to the restaurant manager. They fabricated multiple lies about crappy service they received, saying that they were lazy, incompetent, purposely dragged our feet, and lied about how long they were really waiting for their meals. They said they were waiting over an hour since they got their appetizers, when it was only 50 minutes since they were seated in our section at most. Bert and I told the manager our side of the story. He believed us and said he'd try to calm the Karens down, but told us to do our best to get the Karens their meals as quickly as possible so we can get them out of the restaurant ASAP. Finally, the meals were ready. I bring them out to the Karens and hoped that this would be the end of the fiasco. Unfortunately, it wasn't. 2 of the female Karens called Bert and I back to the table and complained, "Our steaks are rare. We ordered well done." Bert and I huddled. He looked over his notepad where he had the 2 ladies' steaks written down as rare. He asked me if I heard them say they wanted rare steaks when we took their order earlier on, and I nodded yes. Bert approached them and said, "Ladies, my back waiter and I both heard you 2 say you wanted rare steaks. I read the order back to you, and you both said that the order was correct." But the Karens responded, "We've never ordered rare steaks in our lives. You 2 messed up. Take these steaks back. We don't want them. We want brand new steaks." So Bert hands me the steaks and told me to go back into the kitchen and order 2 well-done New York steaks on the fly, which is restaurant lingo for it's an emergency and we need the order right now. So I rushed back to the kitchen. The New York steak counter was still busier than it's ever been. I rushed to the cook and asked for 2 well-done New York steaks on the fly. The cook angrily yells at me, "No one is getting anything on the fly tonight. Get your butt back to the back of the line and wait your turn like everyone else." At this point, I began to panic. It was going to be at least another 40 minutes, if not longer, for the 2 Carens to get their well-done steaks. In an alternate reality, this would be a story where I make the Carens wait the near hour-long time for them to get their new steaks as they requested, but I didn't want Bert to deal with the Carens any longer than he had to, and the restaurant manager did tell me to do my best to get them their meals ASAP so we can get them out of the restaurant as quickly as possible. The Carens wanted well done. They were going to get well done. There were microwaves in the kitchen. I flipped the steaks over to hide the previously made cut marks, threw them into the microwave, and nuked them until they were well done. I brought them back out to the Carens and prayed to every deity I could think of that they wouldn't realize what I'd done. Fortunately, they didn't. The Carens ate their meal in complete silence, giving Bert and I the dirtiest glares while doing so, and stormed off when they finished. Once they left, I told Bert what I did. It took him a moment to process what I told him, and he finally said, "Under normal circumstances, I would be very upset with you, and I strongly suggest that you never do what you just did ever again." However, these aren't normal circumstances. Those people were rude, unreasonable, liars, and they didn't even tip. So you know what? F them. I'm glad they missed their effing show. In the near 2 years I've worked on that ship, I've dealt with many Carens. Stories for another day, but I'll never forget this one. Just a reminder to everyone reading this story to please be kind to your waiters. And our next story. And our second story. Take away our trampoline? Here's every single safety violation I've found. So we live in a communal block of flats by the council. We're lucky to be surrounded by a fair chunk of grass and enclosed off from any roads. At the semi-beginning of lockdown, we bought a secondhand trampoline off of Facebook as our kid has some health issues that I won't go into, and we were worried about his progress. So he has it for about a month before we get slapped with a notice from the council saying we have 2 weeks to remove it for safety violations. So I ring up the council lady and say about his condition and how this is great for his mental health, etc. She doesn't care in the slightest, keeps on giving the robot response of, "We can't have it as it's a safety hazard, etc., etc." We didn't know when we got it that we weren't allowed it, but we hid it in such a way between big bushes and trees that you wouldn't know it was there unless you went looking for it. So this lady says it was reported by a neighbor, and that's why they know about it. There was no way of getting around it. We had to get rid of it. So I sent her a very long list of safety hazards that I'd found from other people's garden furniture to loose bricks and paths, loose handrails, no fire safety, trees falling down in storms, and owners with aggressive dogs, etc. Must have been 50-odd hazards. She had to reply to every single one. Also, I managed to sell the trampoline for more than I paid for it. Downside, they stole one of the bins. And our last story. The HOA board member tries to make our lives miserable. So we've been having problems with our HOA. One board member decided we couldn't use the community pool anymore and ended up with all kinds of petty crap. The woman who was causing us issues not only stayed on the HOA, she's now the head of the HOA. The thing that stands out most is that they towed our car without warning. We'd gone to get new tags, and they were 1 day late in the mail. So think the tag's expiring on June 30th and midnight ticks over to July 1st. So instead of warning us in writing, which the HOA contract requires them to do, they towed our car without warning and did not leave a notice. So we wake up a few months ago and one of our cars is just plain missing. We call the cops, we call insurance, and I call my parents absolutely bawling because I have no idea what to do. The cop they sent in saw the security cameras and he had us call the HOA to get footage to see who stole it. Oh, the head of the HOA said with way too much glee in her voice, "We towed it last night. The tags were expired." She was literally waiting till midnight for our tags to expire so she could send in the tow truck. But she shot herself in the foot because the HOA contract also requires 5 days written notice before tow. So thankfully, since she shot herself in the foot on that, she had to pay for our car to come out of impound. The tags literally came in the mail that day, so we had our shield back on our car. Things that were in the car that would have been stolen if we couldn't get our car back include my husband's work computer, important student documents for the children I teach, and my handicap placard. That was just one thing. And technically, since it's in the contract that a car with expired tags can be towed, we were told we couldn't do anything legally, especially since she showed good faith by paying for our car to be taken out of impound. They also tried to do the same thing to our friend's car in the literally just 3-hour span since she was visiting me. Her tags were legit very expired. But thankfully, we got home and we were able to tell the tow guys that the contract doesn't cover her since she doesn't live there, and they let her take her car home easy. Other things that have been attempted, none have succeeded, because we now know our contract and copy all our paperwork. Trying to fine us for feeding an outdoor cat, we didn't do it, and the security cameras proved it. At the meeting, the HOA head implied we were suspicious because we got so many packages. My husband collects records and buys and sells guitar parts. I gleefully was like, "Oh, it's my record collection. Do you want to see it?" And proceeded to force her into a good, awkward 40-minute conversation/photo gallery of the gems of our collection. She tried to pull the same thing with my monthly crate, which is horror-themed and has fake blood splatter designs on the box, so I proceeded to be aggressively socially awkward at her again and happily showed her my unboxing photos. Seriously, I found that this is the best and most fun way to deal with her, because she has no idea how to handle it. Tried to fine us for littering because I dumped some melted ice in my parking spot on a 95-degree day. During the winter, they tried to say we never signed to get our chimney cleaned and would be charged for it, but thankfully I copied the form where we officially declined, and they backed down. Tried to pressure us to pay to pressure wash our house again this season because the gardeners they hired got mulch on the side of our house. Husband just cleaned it off with a kitchen sponge, all while glaring at the house of HOA president. All this despite our neighbors legit leaving empty Fireball bottles and dozens of spent cigarettes on their side of the porch, and us being like, about it. Yeah, she never gets warnings or fines at all, but we do. That brings us to this. A special meeting was held by the homeowners to vote to remove her. Most of the neighbors were hostile to this HOA member and voted her out. It was the happiest day of our lives because we had no problems with the rest of the neighbors or HOA board members. Seeing the horror on her face was priceless. That special meeting victory, pure gold. The joy of seeing her ousted must have been incredibly satisfying. Here's to a peaceful, HOA headache-free future. Hey guys, thank you all for watching the video. I'll see you in the next one.